What's up, guys? Let's get into week 2 of Bulletproof. And on the first workout for the week, this is actually going to be Bulletproof Workout 4. Every other exercise is actually going to be a dynamic mobility drill, and it's going to be the built-in rest. So technically, there's not any kind of rest that's designated in the workout, but I want you to use the mobility work as your time to recover, to rest, to control your breathing. Exercise 1 is going to be burpee. So we know burpee. I start standing position, squat, down, up, jump, clap over my head. If you need a modification for that, because maybe you have some knee stuff going on or some back, you can. This is the modification. Only if you have to use this. Step back, down, step back up. Maybe no hop, just a clap. So there's always a modification. Directly from that, I'm going to get into our first mobility drill for the hips. This is going to be called hip drops. So on my butt. So here's the key. I'm going to start with my feet flat into the ground. I'm going to walk them out a little bit just so I have some space. I'm going to get kind of wide so that my knees have space to move. Here's the key. I want to keep a tight core, tight belly, because I don't want this movement to happen as I start to drop my knees to each side. So what's actually going on here is I'm keeping my low back pretty much firm into the ground, and I'm just allowing my knees to drop to each side. So now both of my knees are going to drop to what's my right. So one hip is actually going into internal rotation while the one behind it's going to be going into the opposite. So one's going to be going into internal rotation, one's going to be going into external rotation. So this would be one. So let's just say each side is going to be one. So here's one, and here's one. So I'm keeping low back firm into my mat because I don't want to be doing this. So now I'm just kind of moving through my low back. I make sure I'm still getting some mobility through the hip, but if I can keep my low back pretty constant into this mat, then I'm really isolating this motion into my hip. So it's kind of like a screw that's just kind of turning in place. So that's what we want. The head of this long bone, this femur bone into our leg, we want it moving in that hip capsule. All right, so hip drops. So then from there, we would go into our V-ups, where I'm just going to meet myself in the middle, right back down. I'm not actually touching the ground. I'm just coming back, almost touching the ground, right back up. So there's V-ups. I'm going to get into another mobility drill, which is going to be for thoracic spine mobility and for my shoulders. So the way I'm going to have you do this is, you can see I have this little foam roller. You could use a pillow. I'm going to draw my knees up towards my chest, and I'm just going to put this in between my knees. This is going to keep my hips stacked on top of each other. By drawing my knees up into my chest, I'm going to encourage myself not to rotate through my lumbar spine, because I want all this rotation to happen through my thoracic spine. So from here, just like the name implies, I'm going to open the book. All right, so from here, I'm just going to take in a big deep breath. Notice my head and neck are going to stay stacked on top of my spine. Take a breath in. Blow it out as I open the book. My eyes are going to follow that hand, that top hand, as it comes across. I'm going to stay here for about 5 seconds, or maybe even longer, just enough time to take a couple breaths, and then I'm just going to return back to the start. So that's an open book. So I'm just getting this big rotation through my chest, thoracic spine. Eyes are going to follow this top hand. Some of you guys, if you have neck issues, you might want to put something underneath your head, like a pillow or rolled up towel or something like that. I seem to be okay with this. But remember, the key is I need to draw my knees up towards my chest, so I'm not going to rotate through my lumbar spine. I have this in between my knees just to kind of keep my pelvis in a better position, you could also put a pillow or something in between yours. So that's open books. Size push up from the bottom coming up, from the bottom coming up if you need to, knees on the ground, still coming up. There we go. Right after that, I'm going to get into cats and dogs, cat camel, whatever you want to call it. This is global spinal flexion and extension. So I'll take a breath in here. So here's cat. Flexion through my entire spine, especially my low back. Then I'm slowly going to get into extension. So this would be dog, looking like a guard dog. Extension, and I'm just back and forth. Notice nothing else is moving here, it's just my spine. My tailbone is an extension of my spine, so now my tailbone is down towards the ground, and now my tailbone is now going to be turning back towards the ceiling as I get into this very extended position through my spine. To this counterbalance squat, you can see I have a 10-pound bumper plate. So I'm going to use this 10 pounds, and you can use anything here. You can use a light dumbbell, you can use a light kettlebell. Make it light, because really I just want this to encourage a very good squat pattern for myself. Feet slightly outside of my shoulders, weight out. And notice here my spine is in a good position, my chest is up, my knees are pressing outward. I just come right back up. I can pull this back in just for a second, right back out. So this counterweight or this counterbalance is really encouraging me to maintain a good squat position, mainly at the bottom, but really throughout. Because if I'm going to lose it, I'm probably going to lose it as I'm going down and I start to round my spine and end up in this position here, which in the long run is not going to be good for my low back, especially under load. That's the key. If I have weight and I'm doing squats like that where I'm flexing through the lumbar spine, that's going to cause added pressure that we don't need. You may herniate a disc. You may just really cause damage that is something that we can avoid. There we go. Bird dog, I'm back into this 4-point position, knees under hips, hands maybe just slightly in front of my shoulders. I want to maintain a neutral lower back, and I want to keep this low back nice and steady as I alternate from opposite arm and opposite leg reaching out. So I'm trying to make a nice long straight line from this arm and this leg behind me, and I'm reaching, and I'm just going to alternate this, and I'm going to breathe. And if I was wearing a belt, I'm trying to maintain the belt to stay parallel with the ground instead of me dipping through my hips. So this is really a good stability exercise. There's mobility that's happening here too, as I straighten everything out and get shoulder flexion, as I engage this glute, as I really reach back with that leg. And we're just going to alternate back and forth so the core is having to work as you maintain going from 4 points of contact to 2. But remember, that's a good blend of mobility and stability. We go through those bird dogs. Remember to keep it slow and steady. That's about stability. Breathe. So here we are, right leg up. Everybody knows 4 count. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we'll go through that. Mobility drill after that is going to be a McKenzie press up. So everything below the waist is going to be relaxed. So I'm going to get into this prone position on my belly. Hands are going to be right outside of my shoulders. I'm going to try to maintain. So I take a breath in. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Take a breath in. Blow it out. And I want to maintain my hips in contact with the ground. I slowly come back down. So when I press up, breath in. Press up, I'm blowing it out. And then I'm getting this extension through lumbar spine. My shoulder blades are nice and stable. My head and neck are stacked on top of my spine. I can look up towards the ceiling a little bit and just get some good extension through my neck, but nothing excessive. But I only want to go as far as I can by maintaining my hips in contact with the ground, because if I try to do this, well, now I've lost contact with the hips, staying into the floor. But the benefit here is getting this nice controlled extension through lumbar spine. Okay, so I have my hands up behind the back of my head. That way I'm not doing this kind of stuff. Stepping out, driving back up. Good lower body stability, good balance. No excessive spine extension. Just going to maintain a good neutral lower back here. Pressing myself back to the start. Pressing myself. As always, front heel is going to stay into the ground as my knee comes over my toes here. I don't want that heel to come up. So there we go. A little long-winded, but there is a little extra explanation that needs to be received by you guys on some of these movements. Remember, the rest in this particular circuit is going to come from the mobility exercises. Breathe. Don't rush through the mobility work. Breathe. Make sure that you're getting good motion through those particular exercises. And hopefully the ones that I've picked for you guys are really just generally good mobility drills to work on every single day. So I'm wanting to expose you guys to that so that you get familiar with them and know that that's something that you can do to help your hips, to help your thoracic spine, to help your overall your spine with the cat camel, McKenzie press up for the lower back. Oh, there was one last thing that we're going to do, flexion to extension. So after the lunges, very general, coming down, I'm going to allow my low back to round. You can see that. From here, I'm breathing out. Then I'm just going to reach up to extension. My hands are going to come behind my butt just a little bit here. This is some hyperextension. I'm going to breathe in. And I'm just going to go back and forth from this position of flexion to extension. All right, so there you go. Now we're done. Enjoy this. Use the benefit of the mobility, like I said. Any questions? You can contact me. All right.